the horror games, the biggest middle finger in gaming since that cheat thing from Banjo and Kazooie 64. There are very few well known and also very well liked horror games. The Resident Evil series and um uh there's Alien Isolation. That's a very scary and well known game. But I think that's it for all the well known and well liked horror games. I mean, sure, there's Telltale's The Walking Dead and Last of Us, but those two are horror games that work very different than Resident Evil series and the Alien Isolation games. For the main part, Resident Evil and Alien Isolation mainly work on being scary, while Telltale's The Walking Dead and Last of Us work on their story and good gameplay and how to play the game by like just The Last of Us. I mean, sure, both those games can have scares in there, but they're not exactly known for being horror. There is, however, one game series that I very much like and very scary. Even to this date, I am still horrified by some of the stuff that happens in this game. A game called Corpse Party. Now, if you played RPG horror titles, then you might know what it is, but if you didn't, here's basically a refresher course. 9 students and other students from other schools are trapped in a abandoned school after doing what I can guess is a satanic ritual for the devil himself. Um, and that's basically the whole starting plot. I mean, yeah, there's other plot to this, but I mean, that's the gist of it. It seems too simple to be good, but you'd actually be false in thinking that. I actually still like this game series to date. However, I do think that there are some things we need to talk about this game series. So I want to take some time into talking about every game series, starting from this one, that the Repeated Fear, or wait no, the Blood Covered Edition. Now this game was actually a reboot from a very old video game of Corpse Party made in the late 90s, and I haven't found the old anything about the old game. I know that Markiplier has played it, but that's basically the gist of it. Never played it before. It looks fairly boring and uninteresting. So I'm guessing they made this reboot to show the potential of what Corpse Party could be. The game starts basically very subtle, with some weird chicks talking about a ghost story with 6 of her friends. Uh, and they're not as stereotypical as your average horror movie, but they're pretty close. You got the jock guy, the guy who everyone has a crush on, the girl that will not shut up for the life of her, and the girl that no one likes. Oh yeah, also the girl that is basically a liability to the whole entire group. As I was saying, these 9 idiots got to this horrific hellhole by basically doing a satanic ritual for the devil himself. Chapter 1's the whole chapter 1 starts by being very just good. I have to say, this is like the peak of what horror could be in a game like this. I know some would say that the RPG element of the game kind of makes the game less scary, and sometimes I could agree with this, but what really comes to shine in a game like this is acting, and these voice actors are at the top of their game. You start the first chapter is with two waifus, Seiko and Naomi, who is probably the biggest ship in this entire game. And basically the whole point of this game is that they are trying to basically find all their friends. That's just the main objective of this, but they do this in such a creative way that I can't help but liking it. And yes, while the enclosed spaces may make this game feel a bit less well-rounded, I can say that this game is overall very good. And this first chapter is really good at setting the tone of what this place really is. And a literal hellhole. About midway through the game, you step upon this giant corpse of what was a corpse, until someone decided to throw someone to the wall with a cannon and then just died. There's a part I was stuck on for a little bit until I actually knew what I had to do, and trust me, it took a while. I wanted to stab myself. And I had no problem with puzzles like this, but can we not make it so simple yet so annoyingly difficult? As I continued playing, Naomi got a broken leg, and that was basically the whole entire screw up of this entire game. And this is gonna play a huge factor of what happens throughout this whole chapter. As I continued playing, I figured out that I guess I found some random guy in the stall beating his meat. And I guess that was, just very hilarious, but also scary. I hear the little shit's voice from out the hall. I decide to not go after it yet and don't split up like a very smart female. About 60% into the first chapter, the cutest waifu Seiko wanted some ice cream for some reason. I was shocked when I found out Naomi had some, and I guess I just kind of quit playing for like 5 days after that. I decided to take a nap with the waifus on the infirmary bed, which makes no sense. If you're in a haunted place and you want to literally find your friends, why would you depend on sleeping first? After Seiko ditched me once again, before I reached climax, she locked the door behind me so I could get killed by a black man. No racism there. And then, yeah, basically a black man chased me to death with all his weird sperm shots at me. And while I was uninterested, I don't think he really cared. But I do think that while this is a very horrific setting to be in, I must think that there is just, a bit too much of this happening. And while I do feel that, like, if you get a wrong ending from this, you will be kind of scared, and it will set the tone, especially since I've seen that this is a very easy bad ending to get. However, the black man still wanted to smash me. And while I tried to light the hair that was locking the door, I knew that I was uninterested in getting raped today. So I decided to take some shots and make sure I wouldn't feel anything in my entire arteries. I said, "See you later, alligator," and ran off. And then the biggest shock happens in this entire game. Seiko dies. And I'm not going to say how she gets hanged yet, but all I can say is that this does set the tone for the game really well. It makes it seem so much more than just Naomi and Seiko trying to grasp onto hope. This is a gigantic struggle for life itself. This is a very good chapter in what is a very good game. In my opinion, this is the best out of all of them. And while I only dislike one of them, each chapter has its goods and bads. The only bad I can say about this one, though, is a bad ending I got in this game. Now, I actually didn't explore much, which kind of was my downfall in this. So basically, the whole point of getting this bad ending is if you don't search a room and read some kind of magazine. Now, I kind of hate this because if you just get a bad ending and not get a certain item, then you're basically screwed. What if you save the game after being able to get it, but you don't have any previous saves for that unless it's like 30 minutes beforehand? Imagine how much of an annoying base you'd have to go back to. I reached chapter 2, and they definitely amped up the horror for this. They made all the soundtracks feel much more intense and creepy, instead of having a slight melancholy to it, and hope. And while I think the commentary is, for both of these characters, is slightly worse in this because I do think that these two characters are supposed to be a bit more serious acting, but they kind of act slightly more, which is not something I expected. Anyway, the girl who doesn't shut up and the jock-looking man are a team after our teacher decided to go end herself. And the girl who doesn't shut up decided to make a candle for a save point, more like. And honestly, if I'm being honest, she is the main reason that this chapter creeped me the hell out. I mean, just look at what she decides to do in a later scene. I think she was on her period or something, but it really makes this game very more intense to show just how close a person is to breaking. And there's one scene that literally gives me goosebumps to this day. It's been since 5 years since I first played this game, and every time I replay this scene, I just get a whole ton of goosebumps. The only thing I can say I don't like about this is that they show a panty shot in this, and I do think it kind of takes away the entire intensity. Also, why does Ayumi's character design make her look pregnant? Like she's holding her fat stomach like it's literally a giant watermelon, even though she's the skinniest person imaginable. Anyway, after that, we approach another very creepy scene of one of our friends being basically held captive by two ghosts, not against her will. But she made the stupidest horror trope ever, which is some reason trusting something that looks innocent but is about to murder you. If I even saw something that's similar to a spirit, I would run the other direction. We then meet another plot twist that will happen later. I'm not going to spoil it yet because I'm not going to ruin this entire video by me saying one single thing. Stop telling me what to do, gamers. Then we find an Annabelle doll, which is another very creepy scene. Just the voice of the doll itself is very horrifying. Also, did I mention we have to run away from this ghost? Which kind of makes the whole RPG element much better because we actually have an enemy chasing us without any attack. Which is a problem I have with this game, is that it shows a health bar, but you literally one shot by any enemy will take you out. So I realistically don't see a whole big point of giving us a health bar. Just have it one shot to kill and not give us a health bar. It really won't make a difference. I guess they will change this later on once we hit the blood drive, but before that, there really isn't a point in a health bar. After this, we see another scene which involves another character death, which is the scariest scene ever imaginable. I mean, I didn't even think about something like this happening. Remember that big pile of blood I talked about that was in the hallway that Naomi and Seiko found? Well, turns out that short one with weird pigtail is the one with the large blood. Which I'm kind of confused by. I doubt that even two children's spirits can be able to throw her and be able to literally just absolutely destroy someone like you threw a grenade in someone's mouth. I think it's a very good attention to detail of what they were trying to follow up on. This chapter overall is a lot of things they were trying to follow up on, and for the most part, they did a good job. They might have had a few confusing plot holes here or there, and some of the bad endings are kind of frustrating to try and not get. But overall, this is my second favorite chapter. Next we read chapter 3, which is by far the worst out of these entire chapters. Mainly because the last two chapters were main objectives were to find all your friends and to puzzle the story of what actually happened here piece by piece. This story, however, in this chapter is very different. You have the man that everyone has a crush on, and the girl who's a liability to the whole entire group. And basically, the little girl just needs to use the bathroom. That's the whole entire point of this chapter. There is almost literally no point to the story to this. You could cut out what happens in this chapter, and for the most part, I would not question what happened. And I know how that they say that Satoshi is the main character in this game, but I just don't like this chapter at all. There's not even anything very scary about it. Even the reactions to the two characters when they see the first dead body is very low barred. Like, you can see Naomi's and Seiko's reactions are, like, very brutal. Like, they're really scared and horrified and wondering what the hell is happening right now. Same with Ayumi and Yoshiki. Yuka and Satoshi, however, act very calmly, and while their thoughts may be different than what they're doing right now, I can't help but think that they might need to be a bit more scared. Then we reach what is by far the stupidest part in this entire chapter. See, you see one of your friends and they're taking a picture of their crush's corpse, which I found very weird and stupid. But the main thing I don't like about this is that they both decide to split up, even after finding each other. Also, I love how both of their reactions are different than when they first see a dead body. I find it very abnormal. Finally, we head to the next building, which I'm not sure if this was a high school or not, but I think that one side was elementary and one side was high school. Anyway, I reached the second building and things admittedly get a bit scarier. However, not as scary as chapter 1 or 2, and not scary enough for me to really give a shit. I mean, there are some admittedly very scary scenes, like a piano making music when you first turn away from it, and there's this girl in the corner who's just talking very strangely. I find that scary. But other than that, this chapter doesn't have much to offer that the other chapters don't. I mean, it doesn't do scares well. It does creepiness okay, but scares are very different than creepiness. If you get a scene in the If you get jump scared at Five Nights at Freddy's, that's what you call a scare. But if you see a scene like someone literally going insane, that is what you call creepiness. And then Satoshi inevitably makes the decision that Yuka has to go outside. What? Then why didn't you just do that beforehand? You could have literally saved about 30 minutes of this entire chapter and 30 minutes of my life doing a completely pointless chapter. I mean, yeah, something might differ. I mean, Satoshi might not be separated with Yuka, because Yuka gets separated from Satoshi after this, because some reason something happens to Satoshi. I doubt that it was a. I very much doubt that it was a earthquake, Because it shows Satoshi somewhere else that is definitely not in the second wing. So this whole thing was confusing. And another thing I hate is Yuka running from Morishige. Yeah, and yes, while you could make the suggestion that Yuka was creeped out by Morishige, there's no really reason to be. I mean, while Morishige runs at you like he is a threat, you won't get attacked by him. You won't take damage from him. You won't get a bad ending from accidentally running into him. You just... He just asks you one simple question. Why are you running? And that is a very good question. Why are you running? Like, you are literally, like, that is your brother's only friend you have seen so far. And you're saying no? Are you high or just incredibly stupid? Oh yeah, and then we meet this guy who's basically a gaifu. If he wasn't going to murder everyone. Remember how I said that there's a cliche in this game, how the most non-threatening thing is probably the most threatening thing. Yeah, this man is definitely no exception. I mean, he seems like a very strong, able-bodied man that could protect Yuka from all sorts of dangers. But in the end, he's just another guy who's wanting to kill people. The ending of chapter 3 ends with Kazami killing a schoolmate, which I get it, he's an antagonist, but you couldn't have done something else? I mean, this is the worst chapter. It's not awful, but I definitely don't like replaying it when I replay this game. Then we reach chapter 4, which I will admit is better than chapter 3, but it still has a ton of flaws. My main problem with this one is all the shit of all the changes in which party to use. It's a problem I really have. I mean, I get why they did not Seiko, Ayumi and Yoshiki, and why they put them in this chapter, but Satoshi and Naomi serve no purpose in this entire chapter, except for Satoshi to stop Naomi from hanging herself because she feels guilty about Seiko's death. Boy, oh boy, will she feel ironic. Also, you can actually let Naomi die in this, which I actually found out doesn't really do much. You actually just get an extra ending to to chapter 4 instead of the actual ending. So basically, you still have to save Naomi, which is the same problem I had with chapter 1. But I mean, and for the most part, Yuka isn't even in the chapter 4, and she's probably the one I'm probably most concerned about, because, I mean, she's the last person that was in the last chapter, so... Ayumi and, Yoshiki are looking for repentance for the killed kids, so they can send all their friends back to the real world. And Satoshi and Naomi are just wandering the school. They're not even really searching, they're just searching for other stuff. I mean, since he can't get to Seiko, since he can't get to Yuka, then what's the point? Meanwhile, we get some backstory into the world's scariest Gaifu. And I'm not sure why we need this. It doesn't do anything with the story. And I don't really like it. Also, there's another bad ending that kind of ticked me off regarding gameplay on how to not get the bad ending. I can't say that it's not bad gameplay, but it is very frustrating gameplay. It is based on memory, and I suck at memory. But after Naomi wakes up from her coma, I mean, you don't really need Satoshi and Naomi at that point. Not until the next chapter, at least. The rest of the game consists of Yoshiki and Ayumi finding the repentance for the killed souls, and then we realize just how taller Yoshiki is than Ayumi. I didn't feel like I should have mentioned it, but I did. Sue me. I also feel kind of annoyed. Like, you have to choose between which ghost you have to give the tongue back to first, and if you choose wrong, then you die. Which I don't really like that much. I mean, it's because you get a bad ending if you got the wrong one. And then another truly antagonizing scene happens that, once again involves Morishige. Now, I'm not sure why all the splitting up scenes involve Morishige, but I don't really like it or respect it. And while some people think that Morishige is kind of a creep, then, I mean, it's strength in numbers, though. I mean, are you really gonna tell me that you'd rather have 2 people instead of 3 people? Is that really what I'm being told right now? Another thing it took me a while to notice is that Morishige is the only one out of all the 9 characters that has his last name as the main name. Which also I find weird. Can someone explain to me why every character calls the other character by their last name instead of by their first name? I'm missing something. Does someone want to explain to me something? After appeasing all the ghosts, you get the shocker of a lifetime. It wasn't the principal that killed the ghosts. I mean, kind of, but not really. It was actually a girl named Sachiko, which is the nurse's daughter, of which I believe, which is why the spirit in the nursery station was chasing Naomi, because it was a nurse. Also, you get this very intense scene in Chapter 5, and also, can I say, Chapter 5 is much better than Chapter 3 and 4. Chapter 5, though, is probably the least scariest out of all of them, unless you're talking about bad endings. If you're talking about bad endings, then, oh my god, you are in for shockers. Absolute horror fests that you will only live to see if you are 39. For the most part, though, the scene itself is chapter itself is very good, if not missing out a few key parts. Now, I was thinking about telling you the twist with Seiko and Naho, but I'm not going to. That's something you guys will just have to do on your own, because it's a really shocking thing that happens. I recommend you guys search up Corpse Party and see what happens at the end with that regards Seiko. It is very surprising and very emotional. So what is my main opinion on Corpse Party? blood covered. I believe it is a very amazing piece of work that was only done by a group of what I think 8 people, not including voice actors. This was a very amazing, a very amazing feat to do. And while I do think that this game has flaws, overall I'd give the game a high 9 out of 10. It is very scary. And it's debatable whether it's going to make my top 10 favorite games of all time list this year, cuz I usually update my list cuz my opinion changes a lot. But I'd say this game, for right now, barely misses the top 10 for me.